Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's session or this month's session of United Codes Live. Welcome, Philipp.
Yeah, hello.
So, in Belgium, spring is in the air, which means it's always a busy period for United Codes. We're starting the conference season actually this week with Apex World around the corner on Thursday and Friday. So really excited about that, and it's always a nice event to look forward to. But today we're going to talk about CSS variables in Oracle Apex. So if you want to learn more about what it is specifically and how you can use CSS variables in your Apex application or use them to adapt the way your Apex application will look, then I would say listen very carefully to Philipp.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Just one thing beforehand. If you're on LinkedIn, please maybe switch to YouTube, because sometimes LinkedIn is a bit weird. Like last time, there was a super big delay. We asked if there are some questions, and 2 minutes later, the questions arrived, and we already finished the stream. So not the screen. So maybe consider switching to YouTube. And funnily, LinkedIn, I wanted to write the link in the chat, but it doesn't even allow us as hosts to chat in LinkedIn. I don't know what's going on. All right.
Yeah, I also forgot to say that if you have questions, you can post them in the chat, and we will address them during the session.
All right. So let's get started. So CSS variables, the secret sauce of Apex styling. First, who is this person speaking? I'm Philipp. You may have known me. I'm in the Apex scene for quite some while. I love everything around web and databases. So Apex is of course a nice fit. But I also like things not strictly tied to Apex. I like to enhance Apex or extend Apex. So that's why I'm also curious about topics just from the web world, and CSS variables are especially one of those. And you can find me online. I do a lot of videos on the YouTube channel on United Code. So I do a lot of blog posts, and hopefully we see us one day at conferences or somewhere else. Okay. So what do we look at today? So first, we start off with some CSS basics or fundamentals, because these also apply to CSS variables. What are these CSS vars? How are they used in Apex? How can we use them to change universal theme or how Apex looks? How can we use them for our custom components, custom HTML and stuff? And in the end, we have some quick CSS tips. Q&A is all the time. Just write your questions again into the chat and I will answer them immediately. So yeah, let's get started. Starting with some basics. So first is of course selectors. So CSS, we can style things. We can say how things should look in the browser. And for that, we need to say what should actually be styled. And for that, we use selectors. And with selectors, we select a specific HTML node in the HTML tree. So we say, oh, this element should look this way. And here's an example. It's body.cardTitle. That's one selector. And this means all elements with the class cardTitle. So dot is for class under, or which have a parent of element body. Okay, so the thing is here, body has no prefix, so it means the HTML element. So literally write tag body. That's the element itself. Dot we already know is class, so body and then class equals some class. That's how we specify classes. And the hash symbol we can use for IDs. There are lots of more selector options out there, but these are the basics. So let's have an example of a CSS rule. Here again, we have a selector. dot blog post, so the class blog post, and all p elements under it. It doesn't need to be the direct descendant, it could be any descendant. And then we use the curly braces to open the rule or the styles, and each style is written with property : value semicolon. It's very important here. It's not like JavaScript with CSS. You need to close your rules with a semicolon. And then we just have the properties. These are predefined, meaning that you have font size, color, background color, border radius, lots of different options to make things look different. And then we just give a value, and a value can be a lot of things in CSS, like this is rem is like a size unit. You probably heard about pixels, but rem, for example, is one of the recommended units because it's a relative unit of the font size of the device. So, for example, if the user has good eyesight and everything is small, then also the text is smaller. Or if he has bad eyesight and everything is bigger, then also our website is displayed in relation to that. And this means like the one rem is one standard size basically of the device's font size, and we can then say, okay, our heading should be bigger than the default text size, so we can make it 2 rem, or in this case 1.2 rem, or whatever we like. Then, for example, color. For color, we don't have a size unit, we have a hexadecimal color unit. And there are even lots of ways in CSS nowadays to specify colors, different functions, different color spaces. So as you can imagine, web is kind of a big technology. It evolved a lot, and there are always new things around the corner. And then we have a second rule. This is a bit more complicated from selector perspective. So here we target any element with the class blog post. It should have any descendant of table, and then we have this less than less than I don't know. It's less than, of course, symbol, and this is meaning now direct descendant. So it's not any t-body under this table. It's a direct descendant of t-body, then t-row, then td, and there we add some padding, which is some spacing. All right. So now we have to take a look at how it works in a sense of how does the cascading nature of CSS work. So here we have a simple DOM tree. Here we have just a parent div with the class and a child div with another class. And you can see here I have a rule. I target the parent class of A, and I say this should be orange red. And you notice this text here is in the child, it's in the class B div, but still it will be orange red because all the children inherit the styling of the parent. So this is orange red, the text here is set here, but this is still applied to this one because inheritance takes place here. Then there's specificity. So this is the same example, but now I added another rule here or style. And this is now, in addition to the orange red on the A, I also define a rule for B. So now we have 2 color definitions. And now the blue basically wins over the orange red. It's not random. It's not the order of when it defined. It's blue because this text is close, or it's just the same div, right? The text is literally the B element. So the rule for this one is more specific to the text, where this one is it's the rule on the parent element. So it's farther away, basically. So always the closest rule will win and will be applied by the browser. And then we can even be more specific. So we now have not only the B of blue, but also I added a class C. And here I have a rule where I just basically specify or select both classes at the same time. So notice we don't have any space here. This means really I want an element with both classes B and C. And of course, this is referring to 2 classes rather than 1. So it's more specific. So this time, this one wins over the blue. And last but not least, here we have an ID now with the name D. And then even if I just specify one thing, ID is unique in HTML, meaning in CSS, if you if you specify an ID, it thinks, oh, you really want to override the color of this one. So the browser takes this as the most specific one and applies the green rule now. All right, why do I tell you this? Because this also applies to CSS variables we will see later. Okay, so now what are really CSS variables? Actually, I lie to you, they're not called CSS variables. In the specification of the feature, it's called CSS custom properties, but everybody just calls them CSS variables because variables is the common term. Custom properties, yeah, it's technical, I guess. It's technically the truth. And it's nothing really new. It's widely supported since April 2017, but the thing is, around that time, Internet Explorer was still around and still supported, and this didn't support it, so widely supported from nowadays perspective, meaning not including Internet Explorer. So it took Internet Explorer to be killed to really that modern browsers all supported and that people really adopted them. And yeah, what does it allow us to do? Variables, you can probably guess already. It allows us to define and reuse values, like all kinds of CSS variables, like left, colors. Here, this is a complex pattern of a border. We can all put these in variables and then reference them later, and don't have to redefine them each time we use them. Note this was possible before with SAS and LAS, and these were CSS preprocessors, meaning you write locally on your computer in a file. You could then define variables, but then you would run a build script, and in the end, the build script would replace all the variables with the actual values. So in the output CSS, there were no variables left. So this was just an enhancement for development. And yeah, that literally variables were the main reason these technologies existed. And actually nowadays CSS implemented this, and of course also other features that were popular in this one. So I don't see these two being used anymore much. But that's good, I guess. So, okay, how can we use them? Okay, so first here you can see a special rule, and this means this is the root element. This is the most parent element you can have in a website. It's always there. And it makes sense to define your variables at this level because it's also inheritance applied. So it's only available this variable on the element or the child of where you define it. I could also define it literally down there at a div, but then on a different div that's above or a different path, it won't be available there. So by applying it to the root element, you can always use these variables anywhere. And here, these always have a prefix of dash dash, and then you give a name like main background bg color. And yeah, so always when you see dash dash, that's a CSS variable. That makes it pretty obvious. And then you define your value, like a rule basically, just with a dash dash, and that you can define the name however you like. And then if you want to use it somewhere, so actually do something with it, here, for example, on the body, we can do background color, and then we have to pass this variable, so also again dash dash name, to the var function. So it's a function, really. We can't use it immediately. We always have to use the var function around it. And then we apply it easily. All right, enough theory. Let's take a look at how this works in action. So what do I have here? I have this cool website. It's called Apex Template Studio, which I built a few years ago. And that's like an online editor where you on the left side see HTML, CSS, and on the right side you see some data. Oh, I actually already take some example away. So let me load something different. So here you can see, for example, I can write something in here. And it automatically refreshes, so it's a nice live updatable view. It uses all the Apex stylings, so it's just nice for me to now show you how it's working because I can quickly update things. but you will see. And it's a public website, free. Just Google Apex Template Studio or ats.united-codes.com. And here I have this collection called CSS variables in universal theme. And you can also just open these on your own computer, play around with them if you like. But let's open this one. And this is a small demo that shows the capabilities. From the output here, it's pretty simple. It's just some text, a box, and like some two lists. And the most important thing or the easiest thing is if I open the CSS here. So here, as I showed you before, on the root element, I defined 3 variables. So like box width is 400 pixel, a shadow and a border. You can see these are more complex values, meaning they consist of multiple single values. And on this UC box element, I just apply these to width, box shadow, and border, just passing the variables with the var function. As you can see here now, so if I move this to or increase this to 600 pixels, boom, this updates. And if you imagine like me having this used multiple times on the page, it's of course fairly or much easier if I just have one place to change it instead of having to change it every place, right? So that's the value proposition of it. Okay, so but let's get a little bit more interesting. So let's go back to here the HTML view. We can see here we have the div movies with just a heading of movies here and an unordered list with 5 for movies, Fight Club, Good, Bad, Like the Ugly, etc. Most notably, we have The Odyssey, which is coming this summer from Christopher Nolan. I'm very excited already. And this has the class unreleased. So next, you can see here on the output, this is in pink. So how is this happening? Of course, CSS. So let's take a look at this one. So here on the movies, I define a text color. And here, notice the difference. This is not on root. This is just on movies. So like in the UC box, this would be undefined, right? So just quick info here. But yeah, text color is some black. And of course, I need to apply it to the list items of the list. So I just say color var text color. Okay, but why is this pink now? Let's take a look at this last rule here. And here I say movies.unreleased. And here I can override the variable, but I don't globally override it, then everything would be pink. I just override it on this unreleased class. So let's actually see this in action with our Chrome DevTools. If I open them, they're small. No. Oh, damn it. I think zoom in. Another time and another time. All right. So here, if I look at this Fight Club thingy, right, that's black. I can see on the styles, we can see here color is var text color. And if I click on this text color or hover over it, you can see it's blue, it's defined, and it already shows me the value. If I click on it, I jump to the definition of the variable. You can see it's inherited from div movies. And but if I now interestingly go to the Odyssey, we can see here text color are here, like the definition, it already shows pink. If I hover over it, it's a pink, but it does say, okay, text color is pink. And this is because this element itself has the overwritten thing of the variable, right? Inheritance basically taking place here, or more specificity. And you can, if we scroll down, we can still see here the old or the more less specific thing, and it's strike through because it's less specific. So we can actually, if you go over here, specificity is 0, 1, 0, and this one is 0, 2, 0, because it's also specifying another child element. So yeah, CSS variables specificity also works with CSS variables, and this is quite powerful, as we can see later on. Okay, but the last example here, bands, it is a bit different. So we have U2 and Queen, but Foo Fighters is the only American ones from here. The others are British. So I gave it a class American. As you can see here, this is the only one being black. And this, I want to showcase some different thing. So actually here in bands, I forgot to define the text color. Oh no. But what I do here actually is now on the LI, so on any of these list items, I say color var. But as you can see, I have a second parameter I haven't told you about yet, and this is a fallback value. So I say just pink. If this is not defined, use pink. And if I look onto U2, for example, then you can see here the text color is grayed out. It's not blue as before. And if I hover over it, it says text color is not defined. And then it's just using the fallback value, the pink one, basically like an NVL, an oracle, right? Just taking the second value because the first one is null or undefined. Okay, but why is Foo Fighters black then? Because then again, specificity, only for this one, I set the text color. So if I again open the Chrome DevTools, I can see now here first the variable definition, and here now text color is blue again and is defined. So it's not taking the pink, it's taking the first value. Okay. You might think, now, why do I need a fallback color? I just define my variables, right? But you will see Apex is heavily building on this feature of having fallback values. And with a good reason, actually. Okay, so nice. What's about Apex? Yeah, since Apex 21.2, so quite a while for now, Apex is heavily using CSS variables, and even like since then, it's not just 21.2 and then it's done. Like in each new release, it gets extended a bit. So nowadays, if you look in the Chrome DevTools on elements, you don't see like colors getting applied to things. You see variables getting applied to things, and yeah, this is good. Yeah, and yeah, also this is a good way to hook into, so we can modify and change things. That's in a safer fashion. I will talk about this more later. And also pretty versatile thanks to the cascading nature. You don't have to override everything. You can only do it for one region, for example, as I showed you before, by just choosing your selector, right? Okay, so what the hell is going on here? This is literally the Apex CSS of a button. So first you can see it's a pretty impressive selector. It's using commas, meaning it actually uses multiple different ones. And there's just a lot of different places where Apex uses button styling, so it's just a lot in selector. But as you can see here, background color is not just one variable, it's actually chaining a lot of var function calls. And as you can see here, the first one is not defined, so it goes to the second. And here it's using var again. And the thing is, with the var function, you can only have one fallback value. So you could think NVL, same thing in SQL, you can just only define one fallback value, versus coalesce, where you can define multiple ones. The thing is, you can, with this limitation, you can still use multiple ones. You can just, again, as a second fallback value, again use a var function, and then you get another fallback value, right? So actually, this is just a list of 1, 2, 3, 4 values with 3 fallback values, just through chaining of var functions. Okay. So we can see that only the last variable here is defined, the A button background color. And the thing is, okay, why is that? Why is the first one's undefined? You can see, or we can read them. It's A button type background color and A button state background color. So the idea here is this is just a normal white button, the default button basically. Yeah, this is a not special button, so it should just be white. And instead of, or the Apex team thinking, instead of now having to write a rule for each different button type, we can actually make it easier. We have just this rule applying the background color. We just change the variables, or we have variables defined or not defined. So for example, if I would switch this button to a success, a green button, then this would be active, the button type background color, and it would override it to be a green button. But because it's a normal button, this is not defined. Then the state background color, this is, for example, if you hover over it, if you click on it, then it slightly changes background color too, right? And this only gets set during this hover thing. So in the end, you just have one rule really applying the background color. And on the other hand, you have other rules that do set these CSS variables only when needed. Okay, sounds pretty complicated, but trust me, we will see this later. It's actually quite neat. Yeah, and so Apex uses these custom CSS variables, -a, for example, and there are also -ut. And we can actually override these or modify these, right? And the thing is, before that, there's a big difference between overwriting the rule that applies these colors or overwriting the variable. So before CSS variables, you could only override a rule. You could write a rule that wins against the Apex native rules, making it more specific or adding important. And then you have to literally also write background color and just pass another color value, meaning you override the existing rule. But now we can just override the variable, so we don't have to touch this super complicated rule. We just, in the end, want this I button background color to be a different color than the native one. And this is much easier to do. Yeah, I hope you get the point. If not, please write in the chat. Yeah, okay, so also one step back. What about theme roller? Theme roller is also a nice place to modify universal theme. Yes, definitely, please use theme roller as much as you can. This is the easiest way. This is the low-code way. Also, Apex team makes sure that it will work in the future, hopefully. But it is limited in a sense that Apex, you can't modify all the things. You just can modify the most obvious things in there. Okay, so let's get our hands dirty. Let's see how this button thing work. So again, I have prepared some example here, so I can open it, collection CSS variables in universal theme here. And I have this button example. And you can see here, I have just 4 buttons, 2 native ones and 2 customized ones. And what I did here is I just look at the normal button, right? Just open your Chrome DevTools, click on the button, actually on this one, yeah, with the tButton class. And this is exactly the screenshot here. You just see all these things. And here you can see, oh, okay, what's the background color? It's coming from this variable. So you just copy it, take note of it, and you can change it. Oh yeah, where's this coming from? And actually, if you click on it, you can see, oh my God, this is all or many definitions from universal theme, but they are on the root element, as I told you, uppermost part, so they are applied to the whole page. And again, remember specificity. If I just override them on any child element, literally the body, for example, then this wins because it's more specific than the root element is the most unspecific element. All right, I hope this is understandable. So yeah, so this is how I explore the component. I just take, okay, which CSS variables are actually used and make up the styles here. And then I can just write them down. And what I did here, so I made a specific selector to only this button. And then I overrode these variables. So a button background color is white here now. The border color is this gray. The text color is black. Border radius is 0. So it's not rounded at all. This is slightly rounded. And you can see the hover most different changes, like here this hover effect, the box shadow here completely different. And I didn't have to touch like anything of this weird, super complicated button selector, right? It's just overwriting these variables, which I think is way more maintainable. It's actually way more safe and the best way to do customizations of universal theme. But however, you can only do it if there is a variables. So actually what I also wanted to do is here, as you can see, the icon is a bit grayish where the text is black. Normally, Apex has no variable for that because the icon is always the same color of the text. So in this case, I had to use the old way of literally writing a rule with specifically targeting this element and setting a color. That's the thing here. I only change variables. Here I really apply a property rule here and set a color to be able to make this icon green. And then also I removed some outline. I guess this is when tabbing. So this is blue and this is now black. I don't know. I thought it would be gone. Must be something different. And yeah, same procedure for the hot button. It's just now a different selector. It's more specific, meaning that it also targets the T-button hot class. And then it's completely different. Just again, same variables, just different values. Yeah, and I would say this is quite straightforward, right? You still have to explore the components, see which variables are available, but if you find them, you can just override their value. And this is so much more maintainable. It's just one rule, and you can see how the button should look and change it easily. Like I could do now. Red. Cool.
I think it also has an advantage, Philip, when you're upgrading your Apex applications, that it's much more consistent between different versions, because the variables, they are supported, right? So that's another big advantage.
That's true. Meaning that if you write custom rules like this, maybe like the structure of how the selectors work, maybe they change the class name because they never said this will always look this way. Whereas
exactly, and your rule might not have any effect anymore in a future version.
But like, why should they want to change a button background color? Because this is so unspecific to the implementation. It just literally says a button should look this color. There's no reason for the Apex team to change the name of this variable. So
exactly.
Yeah. All right, I hope this was understandable. And yeah, so you could now, like in my demo, I just applied to one single button, right? But you could just apply to any button, for example, T button, not T button header. So that's what I find out. For example, you might not want to target like header buttons. And yeah, so you find a very specific rule, or you could maybe do just for one reason, however you like, but you just set these and it will work. Great. Same for the hot button. Or like work globally in your app, or like how specific you want it to be. Okay, a whole separate aspect of this is if you create custom components. Think of template components or region plugins or custom templates, etc. So first off, we actually have documentation on these. So if I open this link in the universal theme application, here under reference, there is the CSS variables section. And here we can see the U. It's not UT, it's actually U. Oh no, it's U and UT. Okay. Variables defined. Primary, contrast, shade. So we have lots of things. This is the most important ones, the background colors, the border colors, border width. And the coolest thing, for example, we change here from this one to the dark theme. Of course, in the background, it only changes these variables. So for example, now the component background color is black. So our theme change makes all the components look native still and not like weirdly out of place. Okay, so now what I did let, and this was 1 year ago, whole different, it feels so long ago because I used AI to create some HTML template. Back then it was so cool, ChatGPT can do this. Nowadays it's like, yeah, of course, we do it all day, right? But like I just told it, here, create me this cool soccer results or football results template. And yeah, came up with something cool. It looks like a bit spacey, but the thing is, it does not look like Apex, right? It's, yeah, add this to your app and maybe it's fine, but do it multiple times. Just let AI create some components and you will end up with really inconsistent styles and your app will look like a theme park, but not really like a designed or like a calm interface. So it would be nice if we could just easily make this look consistent, right? So yeah, would be cool. So let me actually find my notes. I found them. Okay. So what we have here, we have, I made it, of course, easy for myself. So we have just on the root elements all the CSS variables that make up this design. And you can see it's just hard-coded values in here. So let's start maybe with the colors. So for example, instead of these hard-coded colors, let's use UT specific ones. So card background is UT component background color. Primary colors, UT primary palette primary. Secondary, UT palette primary shade. Accent, UT palette info. So again, these are just from this page. You can find all of these here. You just have to be creative, get to know them, and then you can use them. So you can see here already, it's now in the classic Apex blue. And if I, for example, switch theme, here now it's green for Redwood, or here in the dark mode, it's already having a nice background, where before this would be now white, which is not nice, right? So yeah, also a nice feature of Apex Template 3, you can quickly change the theme. Okay, so next up we have the text colors, and maybe let's also do it quick. We also have the other colors here, so these ones. And for text here, I now use the component text default color for muted component text muted color. I really love this one because sometimes you want to make text less stand out less. For example, here this is black, this is grayish, this is more important, and the VS is a little bit more subtle because we just take a little bit of saturation from the color. And the win is now in this apex green, and the draw in this apex yellow. And if again switch to redwood, you can see the screen is more olive and the shades are more dark here. Okay, so next up we have border radius and fonts. So we just use here the component border radius, the component block header font family, and base font family. So here you can see this font for Redwood and just the typical one for Vita. So here you can see like this glow around this screen here, the initial screen, and it looks okayish in blue. But if we, for example, switch to red, you can see it's still bluish. It might be hard to see on the screen because of the video compression, but there's like a blue taint around it or a glow. It doesn't make sense for us, so just remove it in this case. It's also more flat this way. And for the box shadow, at last, we can also apply UT shadow MD. All right, and now we can see with just a few changes, this now looks Apex native defining on our theme style. Yeah, pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, that's pretty cool, Philip. Like you mentioned AI before, is there also a way to use these or let AI use these Apex CSS variables?
A good question. Yeah, actually, I mean, with AI code editors, they move so fast, and one of the current trends is to use like skills, and these are just markdown files where you have specific domain knowledge, which the AI assistant will read only when it needs it, and you can just create a skill that explains the basic CSS variables. The AI probably, most likely, will know how to use CSS variables. The issue here is the Apex specific CSS variables. Unluckily, the world is not fully Apex yet, so these are like not the main training data for AI models. So it probably does not know, or the model does not know of all of these variables. So that's why we create this markdown file. So I actually have a blog post on this. And you can see I have this Apex CSS vars skill.md. That's how you create these skills. And here I just have a description, returns Oracle Apex CSS custom properties, variables for styling components. And it says, okay, how to use them. And then just a list of available CSS variables with some descriptions. UT palette primary color of the palette. And shadow, there are some general info on the semantic colors. And yeah, with G's, just the AI is able to, you just give it something and you say, make it look Apex, it will just read it and actually change the CSS to make it look Apex native. Works really great in my experience. I also have one, for example, for utility classes with the CSS classes here. Color 1 goes into the similar fashion. You can do some things you can't do with CSS variables, or you can do them more easily. But yeah, with both of these, it's fairly straightforward.
All right, awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so we're coming already up to the end. Again, if you have any questions, now is a good time to post them in chat. If there's again some delay, I might see the questions after we ended the stream again. So yeah, let's jump in. So really great. What I love is CSS nesting. So before you could only have like one rule on the highest level, as if you like, as we love to do, for example, in programming, we have different scopes and go more inner, and this is also not possible. So here, for example, we have label a rule, simple, but now we have a nested rule, another rule, and they start with this ampersand, and they just reference the parent rule. So you can just always in your mind replace this ampersand with label here. Back then, you would have to have this as a separate rule down below, and this would make it easy to just have rules all over the place. And here now all the label related rules are nicely structured. Simple but powerful. Container queries is something to look out for. I will assume that this will also probably take part of it in the next Apex release. And the thing is responsiveness. Okay, we have responsiveness for quite a while, right? There's one issue with responsiveness, how it was before. Before we used media queries. If you implemented them by yourself, then you would have add media. And media queries allowed you to define styles based on the screen dimension. Like you'd say, okay, only apply this rule when the screen is at minimum 1000 pixel wide, so maybe a laptop. Whereas the ones below that are for phones, it's narrower screen, and by that you can have a beautiful set of rules based for each breakpoint, you call them, phone, tablet, laptop, big screen, for example. Yeah, this works fine, but there's some issue, for example, if you develop a component. So think of an interactive report. The issue here is that an interactive report has its own styles, right? But it's not really tied to the screen width. It's tied to you as a developer. You decide how wide is the interactive report actually on the page. You can say, oh, it's just 2 columns wide. Then it doesn't matter how big the whole screen is. It just matters that it's very narrow, scrammed onto this big page. And with container queries, you now basically define a parent element as a container that contains your element. And then this container query, min with is not based on the screen size, but just on the parent element. So if the developer puts it into a tiny space, you can react to it, make it more dense. And if it's on a big one, you can just show it with more space or something. So yeah, this is just more smart than media queries, and in the long run, I will assume that this mostly will be the dominant way to make responsiveness work. Flex and grid, and these are CSS layout functionalities. So grid might ring a bell. Apex is already using a grid system for years, but the thing is, before that, it was more or less hacked into CSS, meaning that you would apply width of this and that percentage. But nowadays, there's a native way to define a grid. Flex and grid basically means you want to display elements next to each other, and the question is like how much space each thing takes, and like how you handle, for example, alignment or just space between that. And with grid, you can say also like I want to have a 12 space grid, and this element is from this 12 space is 4, and this one is 3, and there should be this much gap between these, and they should be stretched or like spaced evenly with their maximum heights or based on the gap. And so super powerful. Yeah, grid is this 12 column, and flex is just cramp them in there, just make them look next to each other. Both super powerful, also nowadays a dominant way how people develop websites, and they also will come to Apex. At least I have an idea in Apex to have like a flex region template, and it's on the roadmap, so let's pray that it's in 26.1. Also, super easy that way to make responsive layouts. The column grid is a little bit sometimes getting in your way when it comes to responsiveness. All right, that's it. Thank you very much for your attention and for being part of this. If you have any questions, you can still write comments on LinkedIn or YouTube, and I will take a look at them. And have a nice day.
All right, thank you guys for watching, and until next time.